Let's talk about one of the biggest what-ifs in modern history. Picture this. It's late in the war, 1944, 1945, and the Third Reich is on the verge of collapse. As a last, desperate gamble, German propaganda starts screaming about these secret wonder weapons that are supposedly going to turn the entire war around. But here's the question. Was any of it real? Was this a genuine threat, or was it just the final, desperate fantasy of a dying regime?
The official term was wunderwaffen, which literally means wonder weapons. And look, we're not just talking about a slightly better tank or a plane that's a little faster. The promise here was something else entirely, truly revolutionary technology. Weapons so advanced they could make Allied armies totally obsolete and somehow snatch victory from the absolute jaws of defeat.
So that really gets us to the heart of it, doesn't it? Could these weapons have actually rewritten the end of World War II? Or was this all just a propaganda machine working overtime, trying to prop up a cause that was already lost? Well, let's break it all down. Okay, so we're going to start with the most famous of these wonder weapons, the ones that actually got used in large numbers, the V weapons. That V, by the way, stood for Vergeltungswaffe, which means vengeance weapon. And that name tells you everything you need to know about their main target, civilian morale.
First on the scene was the V-1 flying bomb. You know, if you were living in London back in '44, you knew this sound. Its pulse jet engine made this horrible sputtering noise that earned it the nickname the buzz bomb. But the real terror? It was the silence. When that buzzing suddenly stopped, that's when you knew it was falling. It was a pure psychological weapon, just designed to keep people in a constant state of fear.
But the V1 had a big brother, and it was a massive leap forward in technology, the V2. This was developed by a team led by the famous Wernher von Braun, and it was nothing less than the world's first long-range ballistic missile. Get this, it traveled faster than the speed of sound. That meant there was zero warning, just a silent arc high up in space, followed by a massive, devastating explosion. It was, for all intents and purposes, unstoppable.
So you have these two weapons, right? The V1 was pretty cheap, something you could mass produce. But it was slow enough that fighters could actually shoot it down. The V2, on the other hand, was this incredible, expensive marvel of engineering that you couldn't intercept. But, and this is the key, both of them were wildly inaccurate. They were terror weapons. They could hit a city, sure, but a specific military target like a factory or a bridge? No way.
And really, that's the final word on them. The V weapons were absolutely technological pioneers. I mean, they basically kicked off the entire missile age. But as tools of war, they were strategically useless. They caused a whole lot of suffering, a whole lot of fear, but they were way too expensive and too inaccurate to actually change the outcome on the battlefield.
All right, let's shift gears from rockets to the skies above, because at the exact same time, Germany was pioneering a technology that would literally define the next 50 years of air combat, the jet engine.
So I want you to meet the Messerschmitt Me 262. On paper, this plane was an absolute monster, a complete nightmare for the Allies. It was the world's first operational jet fighter. It was so much faster than Allied propeller planes like the P-51 Mustang or the Spitfire that they basically looked like they were standing still. And it was armed with 4 huge 30mm cannons that could just rip a B-17 bomber to shreds in a single pass. This thing had the potential to sweep the Allies from the skies.
But here comes reality. That incredible promise was completely chained to the ground by simple logistics. Production was painfully slow. Allied bombing was hammering the factories, and those early jet engines were, to put it mildly, not reliable. But the biggest problem of all? Germany was running out of fuel. I mean, you can have the fastest, most powerful jet in the world, but if you can't get it off the runway, it's just a very expensive, very heavy piece of metal.
And the Me-262 wasn't the only futuristic jet they were working on. Check this thing out. This is the Horton Ho 229. It was a jet-powered flying wing, and some people call it the world's very first stealth aircraft. I mean, what an incredible concept, right? It was decades ahead of its time. But just like so many of these amazing projects, they only ever built a few prototypes. It never saw a single day of combat. So now we're going to move from weapons that were merely impractical to the ones that were truly fantastical. These were the wonder weapons that pretty much only existed on blueprints, and they really show a growing detachment from what was actually possible.
Take a look at this number, 1,000 tons. That was the planned weight of a super heavy tank called the Land Cruiser P-1000, nicknamed the Rat or Rat.
Honestly, to call it a tank is an understatement. This was basically a mobile land battleship designed to carry the exact same massive guns you'd find on a warship.
And yeah, of course, it was never built. I mean, just think about it for a second. How would you even power it? What bridge on Earth could possibly hold it? And how could you ever hide it from Allied bombers? It was a complete logistical nightmare, a weapon that was literally too big for the world it was supposed to conquer.
But what about the ultimate wonder weapon, the one everyone was terrified of, the atomic bomb? Now, Germany had some brilliant scientists, people like Werner Heisenberg, leading their nuclear research program. In fact, the fear that they might build a bomb first was the main reason the Allies started the Manhattan Project.
The truth, though, they were never even close. The German nuclear program was underfunded, it was disorganized, and it was just bogged down by some major scientific mistakes. When you compare it to the gigantic industrial and scientific machine that was the Manhattan Project, well, the Germans were years away from even having a shot at a working bomb. It wasn't even in the same league.
So, when you put it all together, you've got the rockets, the jets, these fantasy tanks. What's the final verdict on the Wunderwaffen? Did they have any chance of changing things?
Well, in the end, their failure really boils down to a few key brutal realities. First, and most obviously, they all showed up way too late to make a difference. Second, the Third Reich was flat out broke on resources. No fuel, not enough rare metals, not enough skilled labor to build these things in numbers. Third, many of these weapons were rushed and proved incredibly unreliable. And finally, even when they did work, like the V2, they were used as terror weapons, not for any real strategic military goal.
So after looking at all this fascinating and, let's be honest, terrifying technology, what's the big lesson here? What does the story of the Wunderwaffen really teach us about how wars are fought and won?
And here it is. This is the key takeaway. A single, brilliant piece of technology is almost never enough. Ultimately, war is a contest of production, of logistics, of resources. The most advanced jet fighter in the world is totally useless if you don't have fuel for it. The deadliest rocket is a waste of time if you can't build enough of them to actually matter. The lesson of the Wunderwaffen is that wars aren't won by a single silver bullet, but by the relentless, grinding power of industrial might.